Buccaneers safety has gotten officially waived from the team. According to reports, this decision to waive Sanders was in connection to an on-field incident in which Sanders would end up striking opposing player.
I'm proud of my kids, all of them. And I prepared my kids for any and everything that could possibly happen in life and in sport.
Eric Dickerson just lit a fire under the NFL with a wild claim about Shiloh Sanders getting cut by the Buccaneers. And if even a piece of it is true, it might explain why Deion Sanders' sons keep finding themselves at the center of NFL drama. In the span of one messy week, the Sanders brothers made more noise than some veterans make an entire season, and not for the right reasons. Shiloh got ejected from a preseason matchup after throwing hands with another player. Less than a day later, the Bucs dropped him without blinking. Meanwhile, his brother Shedeur wasn't catching any breaks either. He was sacked 5 brutal times in just one half before being benched, barely getting a chance to settle in. And the media? They pounced instantly, spinning the story that he doesn't even belong in an NFL jersey. To casual fans, this might look like 2 young guys struggling to find their footing in the league. But Eric Dickerson says don't fall for it, because this goes way deeper than talent. According to him, this whole situation reeks of politics. Dickerson claims the NFL has been waiting for the perfect moment to knock the Sanders family down a peg. And Shiloh's sudden release? That was just their opening shot. The real issue, he says, isn't about plays on the field. It's about perception. The league can't stomach how Deion, better known as Coach Prime, refuses to play by their rules.
A couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously.
The flashy suits, the bold speeches, the ever-present cameras. They see him as a disruptor who doesn't bow to tradition. And now, his sons might be paying the price for it. Dickerson's basically saying the league wants to make an example out of Deion's kids, punish the sons to clip Coach Prime's wings. And here's the part that shakes the table. Eric swears none of this is random. It's about protecting the machine by disrupting the outliers. If you watch football long enough, you know this pattern by heart. The timing, the headlines, the discipline narrative, it all feels a little too convenient. The NFL has a long record of icing out players who won't toe the company line. We've heard executives toss out lines like inmates running the prison, and we've seen those plantation-era power dynamics people always bring up. Different faces, same energy. So what's happening with the Sanders clan? Dickerson says it's the exact same playbook running again, just updated for the social media era. Let's break it down, step by step, starting with Shiloh. The man was 24 hours from his first regular season appearance.
In a discussion about player protests during the national anthem, Houston Texans owner Bob McNair said, quote, "We can't have the inmates running the prison."
A lifelong dream within reach. Then it unraveled in a blur during that preseason clash. He got tangled with Bills tight end Zach Davidson. Tempers flared, and the moment got messy. Cameras caught Davidson yanking Shiloh's face mask after the whistle, and that's when everything detonated. Right there, that moment could have easily drawn a flag. At the very least, the refs could have stepped in to cool things off. But nope, they let it slide. Frustrated, Shiloh snapped and threw a punch. Not the smartest move, sure. But here's where the double standard came into play. Zach immediately flipped into victim mode, acting blindsided, while Shiloh got stamped as the aggressor. And let's be real, we've all seen this movie before. Pre-season scraps, training camp scuffles, joint practice brawls. They happen every single year. Normally, it's nothing major. Maybe a fine, maybe a quick warning, maybe a light suspension, and then the season moves on. But this time...
I know you can't throw punches in this league. I mean, that's inexcusable. They're going to get you everything. Got to grow from that.
And then what did you say to the officials after that? It looked like you were possibly trying to argue.
We're talking about another.
Shiloh didn't even get the grace of a do-over. He didn't last 48 hours. Less than a day later, Tampa Bay cut him loose, cold and clean. And here's where the mess piles higher. Buccaneers coach Todd Bowles didn't bother standing up for his player. After the team's 23-19 loss, reporters pressed him about the altercation. His response? Just one line. Shiloh's actions were inexcusable. Period. No context, no mention of Zach Davidson being the one who lit the fuse in the first place. The blame landed squarely on Shiloh's shoulders, and the narrative was set in stone. No accountability, no balance, just all the blame dumped on Shiloh. But here's the real kicker. It wasn't just about him getting flagged and tossed. The bigger issue is that the ref was standing right there, staring at Davidson yanking Shiloh's face mask after the whistle, clear as day unnecessary roughness. And still, no flag. Nothing. How does that even happen unless somebody wanted Shiloh gone from the jump? And don't forget, this isn't the first time he's been hit harder than the situation called for. Back at Colorado, Shiloh got ejected for targeting on a hit most fans swore was clean. Even commentators called it weak. Now fast forward, one heated preseason scrap, and suddenly his entire NFL shot gets ripped away. Meanwhile, Zach Davidson, he skated off untouched. No flag, no fine, not even a slap on the wrist. To make it worse, Zach flat out denied provoking Shiloh. He told reporters Shiloh just got mad about being blocked, and the media ate it up. Suddenly, the narrative was Zach the innocent bystander versus Shiloh the hothead who couldn't control himself. It's insulting how lopsided the coverage was.
Felt like you kind of were just finishing your block through the play, and he just felt some sort of way about it.
Yeah, something on the backside of screens we preach is the guy on the backside is making the touchdown block. I was just chasing the far DB and trying to finish through the whistle, and he had a little bit more to say.
Did you say to him you're too small?
I didn't say anything. I may have gestured something, but if you get mad for getting blocked, I can't really control what he does.
You don't even need to be a Shiloh fan to see the bias. The imbalance screams louder than the play itself. So can you really blame fans for thinking this was sabotage? Social media exploded with people calling foul. One fan on X wrote, "A setup. The players were told to start something. The ref was told to wait. He watched the whole thing and only threw the flag after retaliation." Another said point blank, "The league is conspiring against that family." And honestly, after watching how this all went down, it's hard not to think something bigger is at play. Here's where it gets even messier. Just days before Shiloh's drama, his brother Shedeur found himself in his own controversy against the Browns. Preseason game, Rams on the field, final 2 minutes. Prime time for Shedeur to prove he can handle pressure. But out of nowhere, Kevin Stefanski yanks him and throws in Tyler Huntley. Fans weren't buying that move at all. Now, people are straight up accusing Stefanski of sabotaging Shedeur as part of a bigger effort to knock down the Sanders name. The online reactions have been absolutely wild. One fan on X claimed, Kevin Stefanski has pledged allegiance to Jim Crow just to prove Shedeur Sanders doesn't belong. Another flat-out wrote, they made their decision long before the draft. Stefanski is just bold enough to show it. Go to a better team. Sanders. These aren't casual takes. These are fans convinced the deck was stacked before Shedeur even touched the field. And let's be real, if Shedeur's spot was truly secure, he wouldn't have been benching crunch time for another quarterback to shine. Moves like that don't happen by accident, and that's exactly why the conspiracy chatter keeps getting louder. Fans are saying this isn't even about...
What I heard from someone that's in the NFL, that the NFL told others, don't draft him, do not draft him, we'll make an example out of him. And this came from a very good source, And he said that, I won't say who, somebody called the Cleveland Browns and said, draft him.
Really?
Yep, draft him. Don't. Because they weren't going to draft him either. They weren't going to draft him.
Football anymore. It's about politics, pride, and control. That's when Eric Dickerson steps in and turns the fire into an inferno. He flat out claimed the NFL had been gunning for the Sanders family from the very beginning. According to him, a trusted source inside the league admitted that teams were warned not to draft Shedeur. Why? Because the NFL wanted to humble Deion Sanders and his entire movement. That's a heavy accusation, but Dickerson swears it's the truth. And to be fair, this isn't the first time whispers like this have surfaced. Remember when Mike Florio hinted at the same thing? He suggested the league was looking for a way to check Shedeur because he wouldn't bow down and kiss the ring. The message was clear. Shedeur wasn't just battling defensive lines. He was battling the politics of the Shield itself. But here's the divide. Some fans aren't buying it. They argue Eric Dickerson can't be taken too seriously because he's had his own battles with the NFL, meaning he might just be projecting his grudges onto the Sanders saga. Then you've got the other side straight up saying, forget conspiracies. Shedeur just isn't good enough yet. Daniel Kelly, a former Jet scout, even doubled down on X. He dropped his receipts, linking to Shedeur's pre-draft scouting report. In his own words, I put an undrafted free agent grade on him. Bottom line, he wasn't good enough and is not good enough. According to Kelly, Shedeur lacked both the skill set and mindset to make the NFL jump. But here's the kicker. Even if critics want to argue talent, the timing of everything still feels shady. Think about it. Shiloh gets tossed for a fight that most players would have only been fined for. Shedeur gets benched at the exact moment that could have showcased his poise. And now insiders are whispering that teams were warned not to draft him in the first place. That doesn't sound like coincidence. That sounds like someone pulling strings from the top. And history shows the NFL has no problem freezing out outspoken families who won't play politics. Just ask the players before the Sanders boys who got labeled locker room distractions and quietly disappeared from the league. Meanwhile, the Sanders name is bigger than football. Deion flipped college recruiting on its head, brought cameras into Colorado, and proved that culture could rival tradition. To some executives, that's threatening. Fans online are saying it out loud. This isn't about Shedeur or Shiloh. This is about silencing Coach Prime's influence before it spreads into the NFL. Another viral post read, they don't want a new wave of players demanding spotlight, demanding freedom, and bringing their culture with them. And honestly, that perspective is starting to feel less like a stretch and more like reality. Social media hasn't let it slide either. Posts are everywhere calling out how Shiloh and Shedeur get hammered for mistakes that barely make headlines when other rookies do them. One fan wrote, they are scared of Deion's influence. If his boys succeed, it validates his entire movement, and the NFL doesn't want that. Another said, notice how every mistake gets magnified 10 times bigger than other rookies. That's not an accident. Fans are piecing together every detail, and the narrative is snowballing into something the league can't ignore. Even Daniel Kelly's report, which painted Shedeur as hesitant, inconsistent, and capped out at Colorado, didn't kill the conversation. Because the flip side is this. Other quarterbacks with the same flaws are given time, coaching, and patience. Shedeur gets mocked and dismissed like a career's already over. That's why fans point back to Deion. They say the agenda isn't just against the Suns, it's against the entire Sanders legacy. One viral comment from a black Marine Corps vet put it best. This is a tale as old as time. A young black man stands tall, raised with confidence, and the system will do anything to cut him down. Heavy words, but it speaks to why so many see the NFL's treatment of the Sanders boys as part of something much deeper. Another fan called it a systemic epidemic of white America taking issue with any black man who raises his sons to know their worth. That's not just sports talk. That's culture, race, and power colliding on the NFL's biggest stage. The reality is history backs this up. Time and time again, talented black athletes have faced harsher punishments, tighter scrutiny, and less patience than their peers. And now the Sanders family feels like the newest chapter of the same old book. The double standard is loud, and people aren't afraid to call it what it is. But here's the part that hits hardest. Deion Sanders isn't folding under pressure. Asked about Shiloh being waived, he didn't flinch. He said he's not worried because his sons will be fine with or without the NFL. That kind of confidence speaks volumes. Coach Prime is making it clear. The Sanders family doesn't need the league's validation. The league might actually need them. So now it's on you. Do you think the NFL is really trying to humble the Sanders boys because they won't bow down? Or is this just the growing pains of two young players learning the hardest league in the world? And here's a bigger question. Does the NFL secretly fear that it needs Deion's sons more than Shiloh and Shedeur need the shield? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the next story out of our hood is only going to shake things up bigger.